Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Detections with your hosts, Understudy 77, and
Exile Detrades.
I'm hoping that I did it differently that time.
It did sound like you got it all in the first one.
Yeah, it's a little bit more flat. I don't think we need to go again this week. Although I do have to admit, man, the corona-itis is really getting to me today.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm hitting that point. Well, even as an introvert, like you can only be stuck inside and not really do anything or see people for so long. So if I'm not as animated as usual, I do apologize. You know, last week we talked a lot about mental health and the effects that coronavirus is having on that. This week, I will admit, I'm very weighed down by everything.
Yeah, it sucks and it's brutal, and I'm sorry that you're at the place, and I hope you can get a chance to get out and get back out in nature and away from everything to see if that helps.
That being said, we are still here, and we are going to deliver a spectacular performance. Maybe not spectacular. Maybe this week will only be mediocre. But
it'll just be a performance, at least.
Yeah, we'll go with what we go with for that one. I have at least been enjoying the new Paper Mario for the most part. A little bit here and there. Although I'm very torn on it because the combat is very weird. It's a puzzle more than it is combat. Like, they put you on the enemies come in and they're on, spinning rings that you have to spin around and line up the enemies so that you can hit the most of them at a time. And you only get so many turns and so much time to spin them. So, you get, 40 seconds... and you get 3 spins to line up the enemies. The combat is really weird. The problem is you don't actually level up through the combat, which kind of makes it less... It's more you want to avoid it because you don't actually get anything for completing it. It's really different.
Okay.
It's not something that I've ever played a game like it before. I just don't know if I really like it or not.
Well, it's at least different, so it's letting you to try out a different way to go about a puzzle.
Enjoy the difference of it a little bit, and it's very, very puzzle based. Speaking of Mario and Nintendo in general, that probably takes us directly into our news.
Yeah, I'll save my video game comments for another time.
I mean, if you got them, go for them.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm hyped for 2 things that I saw are coming out soon. One is the Dune 2020 trailer is going to be released soon. And we're stepping ever forward to actually having Cyberpunk 2077 released.
Someday.
Although I did see, and this will lead into the Mario too, I did see that Cyberpunk, that there was a wave of fake phishing emails that was sent out to people to try to get them to sign up to get early beta access.
They did actually re-release a really old classic game that I enjoyed called Destroy All Humans.
That game is fantastic.
So that came back out in full remastered glory, with basically no content changed except the lost level made it in. So I made it through the first level of that, and I just haven't had a whole lot of time to play past that. But I'll get there, and I'm going to enjoy playing that game again because there's just something about that game that's I enjoy. Maybe how just horrible, conceptually it is. I don't know. There's something about that game I really like.
It reminds me a lot of the fantastic 90s movie Mars Attacks.
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably very based off of that.
Yeah, every time I see Destroy All Humans, I'm like, is this Mars Attacks in video game mode?
So, speaking of Nintendo, though.
Yeah.
Nintendo has a problem. Massive leak of Nintendo source code. It's causing a lot of stuff, including a lot of thought about the preservationist movement in video games, like the ROM people, about whether or not a very clearly illegal leak can go into preservation or not. It's called the Giga Leak. That somebody had kind of come up with. It's got source code for F-Zero and A Link to the Past, full development history of Pokemon games, prototypes for Super Mario Kart and Yoshi's Island, a whole cache of emails about Star Fox. It's massive and, as it's being said, historically unprecedented. to look at the creative process of a company like Nintendo, who are typically very, very secretive. And this is pretty new. Like, I think last Friday, this stuff got posted. I guess it would be 2 Fridays ago when everybody listens, but this stuff was posted to like 4chan. And there's so much stuff in there, including like there's a GIF about the evolution of Yoshi. So like, they have each iteration that was designed of Yoshi, and also that Luigi, and this is a thing because like this has been a big conspiracy thing in games for a long time. Luigi was actually supposed to be in Super Mario 64. So like that's confirmed now. It was cut, but he was supposed to be there. Which is kind of crazy because this has been something people have been arguing about for since Super Mario 64 came out. Mm-hmm. So people are going to be going through this data, and it's like there's actually like a model of Luigi and like what Luigi should look like and all that stuff in that game. Lot of interesting stuff that's going to be coming out. Probably a canceled Pokemon MMO. All kinds of stuff, but that's probably a big deal breach, and it'll be really interesting what Mario ends up doing with it, or what Nintendo kind of ends up doing with it, because it's a massive amount of data out the door.
Yeah.
And it's early stuff. It's like early maps from Ocarina of Time and stuff too. Like just a genuinely like something to read up on, and we will link it. But it's got so much prototype data and all kinds of other stuff in it that it's going to be really interesting, and it's probably going to change a lot of things. Not necessarily like for Nintendo, but it's probably going to change a lot of things in the game preservationist community and whether or not they use it. They Super Mario 64 source code actually was gotten a hold of a little while back, and they turned it into an exe file that you can run on any computer. So like with source code, expect that things like that could happen. Prototypes of games, a bunch of internal business dealings, some old, some new, like a lot of different stuff. Really kind of an unprecedented breach from a data perspective, I would say. This is like on par with somebody hitting Apple in a major way, right? Or some other huge secretive company and revealing like the whole process of developing iPhones forever. But really, really interesting stuff.
And we can finally get Luigi the recognition he reserves for having been
Nintendo
cut.
did a whole year for Luigi, man. They did the year of Luigi. I'm actually going to be curious what happens this year with Mario being on its 25th anniversary. Or is it 25th or 30th anniversary? I don't know. It's an anniversary year for Mario. So I'm actually curious if they're going to remaster some of the older games or bring them back out. I did see that somebody is recreating Ocarina of Time with like Unreal Engine, and it looks incredible.
That's going to be incredible.
But it's going to be shut down. Like, Nintendo has stricter copyright infringement than anybody out there. Like, they have shut down every fan-made project that has ever happened. And this is very much a fan-made project. So, like, it's totally going to be shut down. Fully expect.
Wasn't GoldenEye a Nintendo game?
GoldenEye was a Nintendo game.
But didn't the fan... what was it? GoldenEye... Oh, crap, I can't remember what it was all, but someone ported it over so they could upgrade the graphics.
I don't remember that one.
It was like GoldenEye Origins or...
The GoldenEye 64 campaign is getting a fan remake, and it looks great. It actually does look great.
Yeah, I don't remember. This is me being old.
But this is from like 2019. This isn't that old. This isn't that long ago.
Yeah, but they like
happening.
Ported it over back in the early 2000s. I think they ported it over to Unreal, so the water was...
Yeah, but GoldenEye also wasn't Nintendo IP. Because it's a James Bond game. There was a movie associated. Like, it wasn't Nintendo IP like Mario or Zelda. So that could change the response a little bit.
Yeah, because that was out there for like a super long time, and people preferred to play that one. Well, back in your day.
Back in my day. Do you want me to hit a couple, because I think I have more than you this week?
Yeah, and you have a bunch that are related. So
I do. So there's actually I kind of have a lineup here of another two. So we'll move from Nintendo to the Garmin ransomware hack. And this is always a tough one to talk about because I actually know people over there. So I feel I really, my heart goes out to you, friends that I have at Garmin. It really, really does. One sec. Okay.
So I was just going to say, so what's interesting about this too is this hack has had a beneficial change for the industry in that they're now hiring.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily know that that's always the answer, unless you're expanding, right? Removing people might not always be the answer unless there's gross negligence.
Yeah, I think they're expanding. I think they're just expanding when I was looking at the job descriptions.
They very well may be.
Yeah.
But basically, it took down the fitness tracking app's customer service infrastructure and most of their services, which was pretty devastating. That should worry anyone who uses a smartwatch or other wearables. So it encrypted much of Garmin's data and basically demonstrates that companies that collect and use highly sensitive GPS, health, and fitness data are targets for hackers, and that Garmin, one of the giants in the space, did not take cybersecurity seriously. Ransomware can happen to anybody. So I feel like I'm kind of reading here. So saying they did not take cybersecurity seriously, I don't know. I'm not inside their process. Garmin's Connect app was down for days, and they have not been terribly forthcoming about the hack so far. Well, that I kind of get that too. IR takes time, people. Yep. It really does. I don't know. I've always been opposed to crucifying a security team at a company before necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We don't know if there was gross negligence. We don't know if it just happened. This shit happens.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget too, with this, it wasn't. They did have some effect onto their GPS arm, in that the aviation database, the Fly app, Garmin Fly, something like that, Pilot app. That's what it is. Their Pilot app was unable to update their databases during the entire outage also.
So, I mean, so far from what I know, the upside is it just took stuff down, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about a whole bunch of data out the door situation, at least not that I know of yet. And the company has said we have no indication that any customer data has been lost or stolen. So I'm sure they're going to really, really figure that out. But right now, there's no indication, which is, for a company like this, being down for several days sucks. But best case scenario is customer data doesn't go out the door. But it was website functions, customer support, customer-facing applications, and company communications. So, they got destroyed by ransomware. And it was Wasted Locker ransomware, by the way. Just destroyed. And that sucks. So they're going to be working a lot of overtime. Along that same vein, though, it's worth, as we talk about ransomware, that the No More Ransomware initiative, it just celebrated its 4th anniversary this month, having marked some considerable achievements at the time. The tool repository has registered over 4.2 million visitors from 188 countries, preventing an estimated $632 million from getting in the hands of criminals. So, pretty cool and good, right? So, those two I feel tie in pretty well. Massive ransomware attack, No More Ransomware initiative celebrating. But at least we end on a high note there. Hey, do you want to pivot into one?
And then I bring us right back down into more ransomware.
All right.
Or maybe not ransomware. Because I did have... Yeah. But bring us right back down into GitHub and GitLab. Not often do we hear those names involved with a security event, but a group had managed to get access to some OAuth tokens through a company called Waydev. That's an analytics platform. So they were able to get those OAuth tokens, get access to code bases, and they were able to use that to pivot to other companies also.
And if memory serves, WayDev is a Git analytics platform that basically exists to track whether or not your people are working. So, like, didn't we have a whole episode where we were talking about, like, employee spyware and things of that nature? So, like, in this case, sensitive information was gained because of the employee spyware.
Yeah.
Just a really interesting thing to kind of loop back in.
Yeah, right here's they're bold on their website. Measure your engineers' performance automatically.
Until we get hacked and all of your Git code goes away.
Yep. And then they got out of GitHub, and in this article, there's 2 companies specifically mentioned that they found incidents so far. But it's definitely like there's a potential of other customers. But this link that we have will also have some atomic indicators involved with it that people can use to see if their potential if they have anything on GitHub.
Yeah, absolutely. Check it out. We do some cool stuff.
Yes, we need cool stuff.
So let's talk about some tools.
Because it's hot. We're not
Let's
used
talk
to
about
35-degree weather here in Oregon.
35 degree?
Yeah, sorry, I still think in Celsius.
Oh. I don't. I'm like, that's fucking cold, man. I could go for some of that right now. So let's talk about some tools. First one is a Red Team tool, but it's so cool I had to talk about it anyway. It's on Kickstarter right now. I backed it today. Actually, they've been up for like a day. They were trying to make $60,000. They made $704,000 already.
Oof.
It's called Flipper Zero. It's a Tamagotchi for hackers. Open source multi-tool for researching and pen testing radio protocols, access control systems, hardware, and more. They were shooting for $60,000 and they made $700,000. It's a portable multi-tool for pen testers and hardware geeks and a Tamagotchi-like body, where the Tamagotchi is a cyber dolphin and it actually like levels up and shit. The more you do, the more it kind of levels up. It's also fully open source and customizable, so you can extend functionality. Like, it's actually kind of a really cool thing. Open source firmware, UTF or U2F security token, RFID card reader and emulator, iButton reader and emulator, sub 1 gigahertz transceiver, bad USB to write your own payload, GPIO, extenders, and an IR transceiver, universal IR remote. It's just... Man, it's a cool project, and we're gonna link it. And like, I would encourage people to check it out. And the picture of the secondary color scheme, the black and orange, is actually really, really dope too. That's
the one that caught my eye as soon as I pulled up that webpage.
I hadn't backed it until I saw the black and orange one. When I saw the black and orange one, I'm like, okay, I'm in. It just does a lot of really cool stuff, and if you're a CTFer, which we'll talk about later, it could be really useful to you. And if you're a pen tester, it could be really useful for you.
And if you're not, it could just be fun and an engaging learn platform.
Mm-hmm. It's also got some other stuff. Like it functions as a hardware security token, like a YubiKey, right? So like that's something that pretty much anybody can use. And you don't use a cell phone. It's very much like a YubiKey. So like it does a lot of cool stuff. The other cool tool is a tool called Kappa by FireEye. Automatically identify malware capabilities. So it's basically a malware triage tool that lets you do some different stuff. Like it basically tries to break down a piece of malware and tell you what it does, right? So it'll tell you if it creates a TCP socket, or it'll tell you if it connects to something, or it'll tell you when it sends and receives data. It'll compare some command strings, tell you if new processes are created. So it basically like has 2 main components that algorithmically triage an unknown program. The code analysis engine extracts features from files such as strings and disassembly and control flow. And then a logic engine finds combinations of features that are expressed in a common rule format. When the logic engine finds a match, it reports on the capability described by the rule. Essentially, it's a free and open source kind of static engineering or static malware engineering tool. FireEye has made a lot of cool open source tools over the years, and a lot of cool stuff for the community that people can use. this is another in a long list of it. I haven't gotten to personally check it out yet, but I actually plan on it because I think it's pretty dope.
You should. I watched the presentation of that at the Sans Defer conference that they had, 2 weeks ago now? It was legit. Like, watching it in action, there's a lot of good information. Even if it's like a SOC that doesn't necessarily get to do the actual digital forensics on hosts, but if they have like the binary of a piece of malware, running it through that will help them immensely. And they've already updated Remnux and the Flare OS to have that as part of the standard tool set.
Nice. I actually just saw today that it looked like Remnux has finally been updated to run on an Ubuntu 18 base.
Nice.
Instead of an Ubuntu 14 base, which is really beneficial because I actually switched from Remnux to Tesseract because I was sick of having to run Ubuntu 14. Because like I don't like the Remnux OVA. Like I install Remnux on top of Ubuntu, but like Remnux was running on Ubuntu 14.04, and that's all you could run it on for so long that I actually switched to Tesseract as a toolkit rather than Remnux. But my familiarity lies with Remnux. Like that's my preference. So if I can now install it on top of Ubuntu 18, like that's much better for me.
Yeah, that Remnux update that they pushed out was a huge one for them.
Oh, yeah. So like I'm very glad about that, and I kind of just found out about it the other day. Oh, shit. I forgot to mention that I had kind of big personal news, too.
What's that?
I officially joined B-Sides Charm as an organizer.
Nice.
So I will be running community outreach for B-Sides Charm.
So when I screw up my presentation next year, you're the one that'll be able to call me out on it.
On Twitter, because I think I'll have access to their Twitter.
Nice.
So expect that that's going to happen. Now, so I ultimately, like, I'll be helping to promote the conference, which I do anyway. Like, I love that show. It's my favorite show. It's also the first show I ever talked at, the first show I ever keynoted at. I've talked there for the last, 4 years in a row.
And everyone that I talk to that lives over in that area, they always talk about Charm in positive. Some of the other ones, I've heard a mixed bag being a West Coast boy, but it's always positive about Charm.
It's a defensive-focused con, and there's just not a lot of those. So, in general, I'm kind of a big fan. So, to be asked to be an organizer was a huge thing for me. It was really nice. I'm already on their CFP board, review board. I'm already pretty involved in the conference. Now I just get to help out in another way, which I think is pretty cool.
Yes, and it just adds to your already overblown list of things that you do.
Oh, don't remind me. Don't remind me, man. That just makes me sad now. I have too much. I got to learn to say no someday.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I really want to help out all these people. I genuinely want to really, really help out the people that are doing this. I like doing this podcast. I like doing the SBT Security Blue Team stuff. I like doing stuff with Charm. I like all this stuff, but you're right, it's exhausting.
It's a lot. Well, it's a common trait that I've noticed with a lot of people in Dead Pixel Sec is we all genuinely care and we all genuinely want to help, and so we take on a lot of extra stuff.
Yeah. So what else do you got? Because I got 3 more.
So I have an interesting framework here. It's a malware-focused framework, but it's a framework that allows it to be multi-platform. So instead of having your Windows executable and then a different version for Linux, there is a malware framework that is called MATA, that's Mike Alpha Tango Alpha, that allows it to deploy malware based on the operating system that they find, rather than pre-compiling and targeting the operating system specifically.
Okay.
Has a number of plugins. Yeah, so this was, when I saw this, it looked super interesting that instead of just on the malware side, the buying the infrastructure or ransomware campaigns, that it's the beginning of a deployable framework that allows flexibility in the wild rather than having to go back to that weaponization stage and rebuild and recompile a new piece of malware.
Okay.
So the link and the data on this is pretty extensive. There is some atomic indicators for some things that were found, but it goes through like how it works in Linux, how it works in Mac OS, and how it works in Windows.
Nice. That'll be an interesting link to check out. That's for sure.
So what they're saying here is so far the targets have been in Europe and Asia, like Germany, Poland, Japan. But it's definitely something I think is important to pay attention to if this is the next evolutionary stage of malware.
For sure. You got another one, or do you want me to take one?
Let's see. I've got three left.
Perfect.
So,
then I'll take one, you take one, I'll take one, you take one.
Yeah.
That works out perfectly. So
you can tell that we planned this out really well for this episode.
Yes. So, I read something about Windows 10, security game changer, might I add, which is always fun. But it is actually kind of cool. So, Windows is set to bring a new security feature to Windows 10. So, let me see if I can actually get in. Basically, it's called kernel data protection. What it does, and I want to make sure that I say this right. It operates by enabling developers to secure certain parts of the Windows kernel and drivers in a read-only mode by way of a set of application programming interfaces, so by a set of APIs. And so to stop hackers from modifying protected memory. The long and short of it is that it will block threat actors who commonly rely upon data corruption methodologies to facilitate attacks. So attacks that might seek to escalate privileges, install malicious unsigned drivers and softwares, and more. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens when this is actually rolled out. But it does look like it's coming. So just kind of an interesting note and cool and something to look at. No one has actually said how long till it actually comes out to everybody. But definitely something interesting. And it could very much effectively kind of reduce the Windows 10 attack surface. So, like, we'll see what that looks like when it actually comes out.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting to see the actual impact. And making parts of the kernel read-only is definitely a good way to go. So, what I have here is, remember how we brought up very recently the brief conversation about this, like, appliances and hardware because of, like BMW. Normal everyday things go into like this rental or subscription.
Software as a service.
Yes. But for everyday stuff. So there was a Sweavey machine that had a premium subscription to get access to the best features. That was $50, $48 a year, $50 a year in order to access that. And there was at least one machine that someone had it, didn't pay, and they bricked the machine for not having this premium service paid for.
Oh, okay. I think I remember you mentioning that one.
Which, I mean, we talked about this being like the way companies are going in order to control and have the renewable income, and here we are. Like,
I mean, and I assume that that's probably going to continue to happen, right? Like, and this was like a weird cooking kind of machine, right?
Yeah, the Sweavey does like it does. I don't remember the specifics, but I know it like cooks it in water. It like everything's sealed, and then it like but it doesn't boil it. It's I think. I don't remember the science behind it, but it's a fast acting, even cooking technology.
Yeah. So basically, you go buy the thing, and then you buy the subscription. If you don't buy the subscription, you can't actually cook things with it.
You can't actually cook things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to happen more and more often, I'm sure.
So those of you who've been considering becoming a Luddite, you now have more fuel for the fire.
Right? So I'm actually gonna break our norm here, and I'm gonna hit two Z's because they relate. Because I have two Linux topics.
All right.
And then you can hit two Z's to close.
All right.
So we've got Doki Linux malware, which has been infiltrating Docker cloud instances. So attackers are targeting misconfigured cloud-based Docker instances running on Linux distributions with an undetectable strand of malware. Dubbed Doki, it's part of the ngrok crypto miner botnet, which ngrok is a whole nother topic, maybe for another day, that's been active for a while. So what's interesting, so this thing has dynamic behavior, right? So regarding how it connects to its C2 is relatively dynamic. So it doesn't rely on a particular domain or set of malicious IPs. It uses dynamic DNS services like DNS, combined with a blockchain-based domain generation algorithm to generate and locate the address of its C2 in real time and phone home. The behavior is so stealthy that it went undetected for over 6 months, despite having been submitted to VirusTotal in January of 2020.
That's impressive.
Right? Only 6 antivirus engines as of today actually mark the sample as malicious. There's a whole lot more to read and there's a whole lot more to look through, but like we're coming into the age of like Docker and like containerized services. So like any malware that's Linux specific and hits Docker and cloud stuff is really interesting to me. But on Linux as a whole, Linux has a whole other problem. And shout out to Kim Zetter for actually pointing me towards this way, because I saw it from one of her tweets. There's a new vulnerability out called Boothole.
Boothole. That sounds kind of dirty, but it's not.
Right? It's actually like I do love I love when they do pictures for this stuff, because like this one's like a worm kind of thing inside of a boot that has a hole in it. But it hits Grub too. It's a Grub. That's what it is. It's a Grub in the picture.
We don't normally hear about Grub vulnerabilities.
Right? So it hits the Grub 2 bootloader, opens up Windows and Linux devices using Secure Boot as an attack. All operating systems using Grub 2 with Secure Boot must release new installers and bootloaders. That's basically how bad this thing is. So genuinely pretty freaking interesting. And a good read and a really good thing to be, to read up on, especially if you're running Linux in your environment, or using Secure Boot in any way, shape, or form. Back to you.
All right. So I this next piece is actually affecting the UK rather than the US, but I thought it was interesting as I saw it coming across. There's this organization called Blackbaud that runs a cloud platform, and in the UK, apparently they host a bunch of education, charity, the UK's National Trust, like a ton of organizations. And 2 months ago, they got hit with ransomware, and that has also affected all of the schools and nonprofits that were using that platform, and the list keeps growing. So they're up to 120 people affected by a 2-month-old ransomware incident. There's a huge list of schools that were affected, but then even like Breast Cancer Now, Action on Addiction, Urology Foundation. It's just a huge list of organizations that are hit by this, highlighting that whole supply chain, right? Like who the service providers are and how it can potentially affect other businesses if one of your service providers is hit with something like this, has a data breach, or has a very big ransomware incident.
The world of which we are moving into.
Yep. And then my other piece here is back to our discussion about the, needless browser war that we're seeing between Microsoft and Google right now. That's kind of like becoming another news segment, right? We had This Week in Ring for a while.
Yeah, we did.
And now we're coming into, what's going on between Microsoft and Google? So apparently Edge has been crashing if Google is set as the default search engine.
Which is just hilarious. I'm sure Microsoft is very, very, that's a high priority issue for them to fix.
Yeah.
Actually, I am sure it's a high priority issue for them to fix because, it's going to push people off of the Edge browser.
Yep.
But I can't help but throw in the joke that, Microsoft and Google are in a browser war and potentially a search engine war. And suddenly, if you try to set Google as your default search engine, you're just crashing your Edge browser.
Yeah. And this is even affecting Edge on Mac OS.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually was just going through a browser switch recently. So I just switched my primary personal browser recently to Safari because I'm not really a big Chrome guy on my personal box. It's just not my thing. I had too many issues with Chrome for Mac, and it was just a beast.
Yeah, I only use Chrome for recording the podcast.
Same. So I switched to Firefox. But Quantum has been just dying lately. So when I type a tweet, it's lagging. And there's no way it's my computer. It's very specifically only happening on Firefox. So I was like, all right, I'm done. I can't use Firefox anymore. I don't really want to go back to Chrome because I had similar issues with Chrome. So I actually switched to Safari. And then I realized that, damn, man, Safari has a lot of really cool features.
It does.
Features that I didn't know about, like picture-in-picture for YouTube. I actually like the way that they handle extensions. They have far less extensions, but for the ones that I need, I actually like the way that they handle extensions. I like that they have reader view brought in. I like that there's just the instant share stuff and the ability to quickly share something to Twitter or whatever. Because I also started using the whatever they brought back the Twitter app. So basically you can get the Twitter iPhone app on your computer now, and they use something to do it, right? It's some virtualization engine to make the iPhone app run. It's new. And I love the instant sharing, and I love the ability to click the share button, and I love the picture-in-picture, and there's a lot of really cool things that I'm enjoying about switching back to Safari, plus it works good.
And Apple has done a lot to ensure browser safety with Safari.
They have, which is another big benefit of it. My first taste of really switching back to Safari was on the iPad, because the iPad Pros with the keyboard and trackpad, if you use Google or Firefox or any of them, it presents to you things in mobile. But the Safari for iPad, they coded specifically to not present you pages in mobile, because it basically functions like a real computer. You don't need mobile pages, which is why I switched back to Safari there. And then I switched back to Safari on my primary computer, and I'm actually kind of enjoying it. It's pretty customizable. It's minimalistic. It looks good. It runs fast. It works. I can live with this. Will I live with it forever? I don't know. Every couple of years, it feels like I switch browsers.
Depends on how the browser war is going.
Exactly. So, but it is interesting.
The last thing about this article, though, with Edge is you can mitigate the crashing if you turn off search suggestions in Edge with Google set.
Yeah, that's definitely a bug, right? Search suggestions they probably made for Bing, people switched to Google, and then it broke.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that it? Does that take us into our topic?
That's it, because, there was some big tech stuff that happened today with a congressional hearing, but I think we can talk about that on our next recorded episode.
Yeah, one of us actually has to listen to the antitrust hearing, or at least read the headlines for the antitrust hearing before we talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be important, right? Because it was a number of very large tech companies involved. The ones we've been talking about for, 2 months now?
And we've been talking about the antitrust thing for a while, too. So, we're going to get to it, but we're not prepared, ultimately, is what it comes down to. Yeah, because it just happened today.
Yeah, and this week has been a big governmental political news week.
Oh yeah, didn't you hear we're going to delay the elections because mail-in ballots aren't acceptable?
Yeah, and
Anyway,
yeah.
What's the topic of the night?
So, with DEF CON on the horizon, kind of kicking off the fun season of being in information security, bringing us the season of the CTF, or the Capture the Flag event, I thought we could talk about the pros, cons, usefulness, just kind of talk about them as lots of people are drawn to them, but really, how practical is it?
Cool. First off, it's worth mentioning that OpenSOC is coming back up. And OpenSOC is super useful and super practical and super awesome. So
Yeah, I'm already signed up, and I'm super excited because they've incorporated Velociraptor with this.
So
one.
I'm signed up, but I can't play.
Yeah, you've got a important personal thing going
on.
Yeah.
Which I'm really bummed about, although Whitney did say that she would save me some swag, so she's my favorite.
Nice.
I'm super appreciative that she's going to save me a little
Shout
bit of
out
swag.
to Whitney yet once again.
Right? She has the best swag. She makes the best stickers, that's for sure. But I'm really sad because, like, you know, it's with it being like a full weekend, not just a day, like I would have really been able to dig in and play.
Yeah.
And like I'm just so thankful I got to play Camp COVID. And I would have liked to play more, but you know, I know a bunch of people who are going to play, which is good. But like that one's coming up, and like that has, for me, right, that is the standard of CTFs. Not because like it does what normal CTFs do, but because it doesn't do what normal CTFs do.
Before we really jump into it, I'm on their Discord server for it, and they've leaked a little bit that I'm just going to re-leak that has me super fucking excited. But they're using a Pip-Boy to save Diamond City from Fallout 4 as a theme for this competition.
Nice. That's going to be a really fun theme.
Yeah, and so like they gave a screenshot of what it looks like, and all the interaction is like you're interacting with a Pip-Boy to do all the stuff.
Nice.
Anyway, so you were saying...
I'm also on their Discord, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's...
So what I was getting at is I really like them because they are not like any other CTF. That's why I like them a lot.
So what is an example of how they're not like other CTFs?
Because everything they do is practical. So like, and I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people with this. I've never really been into the CTF thing. I love puzzles. I love escape rooms. I love board games. I love things that like question my brain, right? Or make me think, or like simple puzzles. But I love like self-contained puzzles. In the sense that like when you go to an escape room, you don't typically need any prior knowledge to figure out how to do things. Everything you need is in the room. A traditional CTF uses like very traditional things. So it's like phone dialers and like transmitting which keys got hit based on tone and things like that. And they're really cool. But like they're not things that I've ever run into where I actually needed to use them in my career. So they're not things that I ever really went out of my way to learn. And, you know, at some point in my career, I might decide that I'm going to go learn some of this stuff. But to date, I haven't really gone out of my way to do it. And I'm sure a lot of people who do OpenSOC could feel the same way about OpenSOC that I feel about traditional CTFs. Because OpenSOC is literally like running an IR and answering questions. So it's something that I do and something that I've done and something that I have experience with and something that I can actually use to test my skill set. So to me, it's incredibly useful as a CTF because it directly relates to the type of job that I have. It's not some weird manifestation of challenges that I'll probably never, ever touch again.
I see that. And for me, some of the things that I liked about when I've taken part in CTFs is the personal challenge of figuring out something that I haven't had to deal with before, or a new tool, or figure out a different process or procedure in order to get the answer that they're looking for. Maybe not necessarily in the way, even though that becomes an annoyance point for me, because the same way they do it in tests, where there's an answer that they want. And if you learn the tool, there ends up being, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways to get the same answer. But the like virtual environment that it operates in only has one of those available. And so if you're not familiar with that one path that they want to teach you, then you end up banging your head needlessly for a super long time.
Correct. And they're not all necessarily like there are brain bending challenges. So like, my brain is never going to go to like look at the first bit of every packet and put that together, because like that doesn't actually do anything. Like that can't do anything at a network level. That's literally just a challenge, like rearranging letters or something.
That's just an intellectual challenge at that point.
Correct. Where like when I jump into a technical challenge, like I expect it to be like technically it's going to do something for me, right? Like it's going to be possible if the question is like, how did this person transmit a message to somebody? I'm going to go, okay, like, how would you transmit a message that you could hide? I'm not going to be like, oh, this person probably has full packet capture on a network that they don't own, and is going to have the ability to go through and look at the first bit because, But anyway, I'm not knocking CTFs as a whole. Like, I have a lot of respect for them. I like challenges. I like lockpicking. I like all that stuff.
And they're incredibly difficult to put together.
Oh, God, yeah. It just tends to not be kind of the thing that I dive into, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of like a personal cognitive bias based on who's creating it and what sort of challenges that they think would be challenging to the audience, which allows for a huge variation, right? Some that are incredibly good and some that are incredibly frustrating based on the writer's experience and ability.
And there's also a bias based on your own experience and ability, because like when I go to an escape room, like because it's all self-contained, like I don't know what I'm supposed to know. When I play a board game, like the rules are self-contained, like it's all strategy, right? But when I do a CTF, I'm drawing on 12 plus to 15 years of experience in this industry. And when the things that don't happen the way that I know that they happen, like I actually struggle, because I don't think of it like a brain teaser as much as I think of it like a technical problem. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. There's that bias based on past experience and not just looking at it as a standalone game with no prior knowledge.
Exactly. I very much go into it with like 15 years of security and network experience and go, okay, like this is how network traffic works, but that's not actually what they need. That's not how you solve it. So like, I find that I struggle with getting outside of my own biases on them. But anyway, like it's not just to talk about that piece, right? They do become a legitimately valuable training resource.
Yeah. We started to talk on it with touching on tool exposure, right? So a lot of times CTFs might be the only way that you, I, any of our listeners can get a chance to play, interact with a tool outside of like a theory environment or a YouTube video or something. So it allows them to get hands-on with the tool to figure out if it's something that they actually want to continue pursuing. It gives people a chance to figure out how much they know, how much they don't know. If it's something they're trying to move into, do you actually want to do it?
It's also one of the reasons why I suggest OpenSOC so heavily, though, because the tool experience that you're going to gain there will actually directly impact the job that you might have, which is what I like so much about it. There's another one that actually looks really promising, and shout out to a friend, Redoubt, but the Hack a Ship CTF looks cool.
I was going to bring that up with the Garmin news because I know Garmin has a huge maritime influence. I don't know how much it is on the big commercial liners that Hack the Sea focuses on. But yeah, I was going to bring that up and give them a shout out then too, because the Garmin ransomware incident feeds directly into something that Redoubt and Hack the Sea has been pushing for a few years now.
Oh yeah. And I also very much appreciate that they're calling it a CTF. SEATF.
Of course he would.
I'm a fan of a good pun. And I am highly appreciative of the name because it's amazing. Also, like, Readout's a good friend, and like he has done a lot of really cool stuff.
He's pretty amazing. He's one of the people that I just randomly met at Derby, even before you and I talked. Like him and I, yeah,
he's a good dude. Him and I are way overdue for a lunch. Like a lunch get together or something when things open back up. But like there's going to be a lot of CTFs coming into free DEF CON. And ultimately what I would encourage you to do is just find a thing that you like.
Yes.
Really, right? Like find the type of challenge that you like because they exist. Like OpenSOC, I am thankful it exists, and the Corelight does some really cool stuff that's similar with like bro specific CTFs, which are kind of like light versions of OpenSOC. But like you can find the type of challenge you like, just like you can find an escape room that you like or the type of board game that you like. I, for one, hate card drafting games because I think they take forever if everybody isn't intimately familiar with the individual cards. if I've never said it here, I own like 200 board games, by the way. So like I love like mental challenges and like mental games and strategy and shit like that.
Card drafting. Maybe I got out of collectible card games too early that I'm not.
Card drafting is not a collectible card game. Card drafting is usually like you start with a base set of cards, and then cards exist on the table, and you can pull up additional cards to expand yourself.
Okay.
And there's a lot of strategy in how you pull up these additional cards. Ascension is probably one of the most famous ones that exist. The problem is when you're bringing out new cards all the time, like unless everybody at the table is very intimately familiar with the cards that exist, they have to stop and they have to read all 4 cards or all 3 cards that are on the table every turn, because you're going to forget until you learn the game and know what you want to build your strategy. So they just, when you're learning them, they take forever. And it's honestly just not something that I'm particularly interested in because they take forever.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to play a game that takes forever, at least let it be something like Settlers of Catan, where it doesn't take forever to learn what's on the board. It takes forever to figure out strategy to win.
Sure. And I mean, all of these do. And like, no knock to like anybody who like diehard likes card drafters. If I had a group that I was playing with where I think a card drafter would like, you know, we could learn it and it would be a lot of fun, I would probably have a lot of fun with them. The problem is I never quite learn them that way. So I never really have quite that much fun with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Where most of my card games these days have been things like Super Fight or Munchkin.
I do like Munchkin until I haven't played Munchkin since I had like a 4-hour game of Munchkin though.
Oh no.
Like that was enough to kill Munchkin for me. I'm a big fan of like Tiny Epic Quest is one of my favorite.
All right.
It's got a whole bunch of different aspects to it. It's got a little bit of push your luck, a little bit of dice, a little bit of like joint pain and suffering.
Nice.
And a whole lot of strategy of moving to the right place, and because there's a lot of different ways to score points to win. I did an escape room in a box last night. That was a lot of fun. Like you have an hour and a half to figure out all these clues and unlock these locks. So like that was an enjoyable game. There were a lot of really cool, like there's, like I enjoy the mental test of things, but I genuinely enjoy the self-contained mental test where I don't have to learn an entirely new skill set to be successful at it.
Yeah, cool. So, but back on the CTF stuff, you were saying like, there are ways that you can go find this stuff. There's like a website called ctftime.org. That's a pretty good aggregator of a lot of this stuff. And as we stay in COVID, the trend is to have, that I'm noticing happening, is more free CTFs available for people to go challenge. Oh, like Sans even, oh crap, is that today or tomorrow? Yeah, it starts today. Oh, started today. They even did a mini Net Wars where Net Wars
Which means
normally...
you can't sign up now. Sorry.
Yep. I can't sign up now. But I think we're going to see more of this coming from Sans specifically. But like Net Wars was normally like a paid remote or go to an event in order to participate. And this was a free open version of it.
I mean, these companies that do this stuff, that do it at events, have to stay relevant when there are no events.
Yep.
Right? So what are you going to do? But with free DEF CON coming up, there's probably going to be like 20 or more CTFs. I know, like, just off the top of my head, I know of the DEF CON CTF, I know the Telefreak CTF, I know of OpenSOC, and I know of the CTF.
And the OSINT CTF. I think all of the villages have a CTF.
Most of them do, yeah. So, like, quite literally, there will be plenty of opportunities from your home to wet your whistle.
Now, I need to look up because I'm curious how they're going to do the social engineering CTF this year.
I mean, there's probably even cooler ways to do it remote, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you should all look into DEF CON virtual safe mode, and you should all look into the CTFs that exist. My recommendation for anybody who listens to this channel because they are blue teamers or aspiring blue teamers would be to go play in OpenSOC.
Yes.
That's my big suggestion to you. Not saying don't do other ones, but OpenSOC would be my top priority if I were, for what I do and the type of work that we talk about a lot. OpenSOC is my priority.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like you were saying, 100% relevant. even if you don't use the specific tools like Moloch, Greylog, OS Query, where people may work or are trying to work, the skills that you learn in using those tools totally relate to anything that's going to be deployed in any environment.
Mm-hmm. And they will help you with command syntax and stuff, especially if you don't have the background in the tools, because it's about the knowledge way more than the tool.
Yep.
So does that cover that topic, or are we moving into the detection?
We're moving into the detection, yeah, and I'm super excited, again, to get hands on Velociraptor in an actual,
I bet.
scenario. It's going to be fun.
All right, man, take it away.
So our detection for the week, hopefully it's not a repeat. I don't think it is, but it is pulling from something that was used in the wild a few years ago, but it's still something to watch out for because it's easily recognizable as anomalous. And what we're looking at here is base64 encoded strings in the body of the initial request, like the initial GET request, but the initial request to a web server. As a command and control channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been used. It's probably, I can see it still being used because it's an easy thing to do that most people don't check for because there's a lot of assumption that the body just is the line break rather than actually containing text. That's a very easy thing to check for, so that gives you a pretty high fidelity. Generally speaking, like my experience has been a very high fidelity thing to look at.
Word. I'm with it.
All right. That's our episode for what's feeling like the beginning summertime.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody. And Exile, take us out.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Stay safe out there. Wear a mask as you go forth and find badness.